hello. Oh my goodness. Welcome to Safe Space with Kira Graves. Oh my goodness. I'm so freaking excited to be here. Why am I saying frickin'? I'm so fucking excited to record this podcast right now. I've been wanting to record a podcast for so many years, but I was stopping myself for some reason. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. Fear. Because fear stops us from doing so many wonderful things in our lives. So many things that we feel are even aligned and that we're excited to do, but we're scared to put our voice out there and we're scared to follow the path that lights us up. And for what? For what? I've been doing, okay, I don't know how to start, but this is a podcast that creates a safe space for me and also for you, so that we can feel safe, secure, heard, and loved. I came up with this idea of a safe space as I've been on a spiritual journey, a spiritual awakening. Working on my mental health has led me to this spiritual awakening. And one of the major things that I'm working on is creating a safe space for myself, not only a physical safe space, although that is important too, but a safe space inside your own mind. Because as we know, our minds like to attack us and make it unsafe to live in our minds, like to live in our bodies and in our lives. If you've never heard of the concept of the ego, it's basically, you know how you have kind of like an angel and a devil voice inside your mind. The devil voice is the ego voice, and the ego was created a long time ago. A lot of it is conditioned from your childhood. The ego is here to keep you safe. Now, I use air quotes because it has protected you in the past from something or someone. The ego mind is just trying to keep you safe and in your own bubble and not challenge yourself and to not, make any waves in the ocean of life. But that's not what life is about. Life is about, everyone has their own idea of what their life is about and their purpose for their life. But one of my purposes is to spread as much love as I can while I'm on this earth and to use my voice to help humanity from suffering. For those of you who have followed me on YouTube, and I'm also an actor, these are all ways that I've been sharing my voice. Now, this is just another way. So going back to the ego, I'm sorry, my brain is all over the place. The ego voice is like the devil inside of us. It's the fear. It's the anxiety. And the angel is like our higher self's voice, or if you're not spiritual, your gut instinct or your intuition or the loving voice. The ego is the fearful voice and the intuition is the loving voice. What I have been struggling with my entire life is being overcome and overtaken by my ego voice and my fearful voice. A little background on me. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old. My childhood was very chaotic and messy and very scary. There was a lot of heartbreak, a lot of loss, and I didn't feel safe. This has been a recent discovery because I've been very dissociated from my past. But as I've been opening up my past, I've been realizing, oh shit, I've been scared my entire life. And I developed an anxiety disorder and OCD at the age of 6 or 7. One of my main anxieties was sickness, illness, and germs. So basically, my OCD was surrounded by making sure that I don't get sick. So excessive hand washing, not wanting to touch anything, like ever. Not even my own, bathroom light switch. My parents could see that it was really ruining my quality of life and taking over my normal functioning. I wasn't able to function as a normal child at that age. So I'm very grateful that they did take me to child therapy, and that helped a lot. But it didn't fix the problem. It just kept coming back every so years, again and again, and stronger every so years. And I also developed other things like depression and other types of anxiety. My whole life has been me battling anxiety. I always thought to myself, this is not how my normal state should be. I feel like my normal state is more calm, loving, and zen than this. My mom called me a zen baby, actually, when I was born, because I was very zen. I didn't cry that much, and I was very grounded and peaceful. And so anyways, I started to develop, all these mental illnesses as I got older. When I learned about the ego, it was through this course by Wendy Braun, who is my mentor and kind of my introduction to fucking fixing my mental health and spirituality and all that. It was a course for actors to basically improve your acting game. All of it was based around inner work, not necessarily all outer work. That was a part of it, but she made it so clear that your inner self reflects your outer world. She brought the law of attraction into it, which I've learned about when I was like 12. Spiritual growth kept coming at me in different ways, like little clues and hints in my life. And Wendy Braun's course was definitely one of these things where I learned about, how the majority of your thought processes are actually subconscious. So things that you're not even aware of. I made it a mission to become more conscious, to become more aware of my thoughts. I did the Wendy Braun course when I was like 18, I think. So 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I'm 23 now. So it's been about 5 years of me working on my mental health, connecting with my spirituality, and it's really, really accelerated in 2022. Like everything came crashing down on me when I had COVID because COVID was my biggest nightmare. If you would have asked me when I was in the depths of my illness anxiety, what my biggest fear would be, and that would be a pandemic. When my biggest fear became a reality, I was definitely overcome by my fear-based thoughts for the first 2 years of the pandemic. But once I got COVID, everything changed for me. I finally was faced with the scariest thing my mind could even fathom. Anyways, I started reading a bunch of spiritual books, self-help books, Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer. I'll get into all that like in later episodes, but I started to practice differentiating my ego-based, fear-based thoughts and my higher self's thoughts, my intuition, my guiding light, my gut feeling. Because every time I would listen to the ego and the fear-based thought, that fear would take over my life, reappear in other parts of my life, and wreak havoc in ways that I would not even imagine. I was like, okay, what I need to do to help my anxiety and to just have a better inner world, an inner mindset, is to be really good at noticing when my ego starts to sabotage me and then allowing for that higher self's voice to infiltrate and for me to actually listen to it. So I wanted to talk about, that was a super long intro, but I want to talk about how I started doing this. And now I feel like I'm getting in a really good rhythm of it, that whenever I feel the ego start to come in and start to sabotage me and start to make me go into a spiral and a loop of anxiety and thinking about all these other things that give me anxiety, thinking about the past, thinking about the future, thinking about anything that is not the now, I've been able to notice it. And that is a fucking huge accomplishment, is just becoming conscious, becoming more conscious of my thoughts and being an observer of my inner world. And let me tell you, this is a practice, and this is not something that you're going to do once and then you're never going to listen to your ego ever again. It's something that I think I am going to be working on for the rest of my life. But it's the most rewarding fucking thing is to just live in the fucking now. I'm going to be swearing a lot on this podcast. By the way, I've also been reading this book by Eckhart Tolle called The Power of Now. Holy shit. I'm a big book reader. So I might even make an episode about the books that have changed my life, because books have changed my life. I'm a Ravenclaw. I am such a fucking Ravenclaw. Like, I tried to believe that I was a Gryffindor, but no, I'm definitely a Ravenclaw. Anyways, let's get into how I've been able to distinguish these two things. The first thing that I've had to master is conscious awareness. This is not an easy thing because in this culture, everyone's fucking distracted. They're distracting themselves from their own minds and they're distracting themselves from their reality because they don't want to accept their reality. The pain that's inside of them is too difficult to look at. So the majority of us on this planet choose to distract and not look at those things. Last year especially, I've had to look at all of the darkness inside of me, all of the hurt, all the pain, traumas from my childhood I didn't even know were there. I've had to really face my demons because I kind of, for a while, like once I first learned about, the law of attraction and spirituality, I was very, what you would call toxically positive. So I didn't want to look at my dark side. I didn't want to admit that I had trauma and pain. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to think about the positive. I'm just going to be optimistic. But you have to be aware of all sides of you, not just your positive thinking, but also your negativity, your pain, your hurt. You have to acknowledge those things first. So last year, that's kind of what my year was all about, was like shining light on my darkness, acknowledging all the anxiety I had, all of the fear loops inside my brain that I had. One of the surprising ways I was able to do that is by smoking cannabis. Again, I'll talk about this in a later episode, but cannabis has been an incredibly healing tool for me. And I think that you can use cannabis in any way that you want, right? It's a tool. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. What happens sometimes when we smoke cannabis is we get anxiety, right? And that's why a lot of people don't like it, because it gives them anxiety and they're like, I don't want to, this is too hard. This is too much for me. And when you're sober, things are a little bit like more numbed, I find. But when you're high on cannabis, I find that you're able to really look at your inner state and things are almost amplified. So if you're having a good day, it's amplified. If you're having a bad day, it's amplified. That's what I've experienced anyway. I know a lot of people have different experiences with cannabis, but that's kind of how I was able to shine light on my darkness. So I kind of sat in, so for example, I would go to the park, smoke a few puffs of a joint, and all of a sudden, I started to feel like people were going to come attack me. People were going to come up behind me and like stab me, or people were looking at me. People were judging me. Like all these things came up and I was like, whoa, this is a lot. This is so scary. Why? And I would kind of just sit with it and get curious about it and be like, why am I thinking this? Because it doesn't actually logically make sense. Why would people be out to get me? I'm not doing anything to them. Why does that even make sense? So I journaled a lot and I did talk therapy, and I was able to finally acknowledge a lot of my biggest fears. That was almost like the first step to this whole healing journey, is acknowledging my fears. And as the year went on, I dove into my childhood because a lot of my anxieties and fear-based thoughts were from my childhood. So again, I had to think back to my childhood and realize the state I was in when I was younger, which was in fear a lot of the time. I knew that the fear didn't come from this present moment. The fear didn't come from me as a 23-year-old. The fear came from me as like a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, maybe even a 2-year-old. But, you can't really remember those parts of your childhood. All that's left sometimes of those few years in your childhood are fears and anxieties and certain things like that. So once I acknowledged my darkness, I tried not to judge them because, judging them that's just going to backfire on you. Upon reading lots of books, doing lots of therapy, I did lots of things to help myself during this time of acknowledging my darkness. One of the things that I learned is to just observe. Be the observer of your thoughts and emotions. And oftentimes, I was able to recognize a fear by paying attention to my body and how my body was reacting in a certain moment. So as a kid, I was a chronic stomach ache bitch. Like, I would always have a horrible stomach ache that I would be crying, that I would be complaining to my mom to send me to the doctors. My stomach was always in knots. I couldn't sleep because I had a stomach ache. I was scared that I was going to throw up from the stomach ache. I had nausea, and that played into my whole illness anxiety too. So it was just not a good, it's not a good loop to be in. Sometimes I'll have a stomach ache or a sour feeling in my stomach, a drop in my stomach, or a quickening of my heartbeat, or a tightening in my chest, or I would clench down on my teeth. I do that especially during the night. Those physical symptoms are a reaction to what's going on in your brain, what's going on in your mind, what you're thinking about, what anxiety you're having. So a way that was helping me was I would pay attention to these physical symptoms. I do this on a regular basis. If I'm going about my day and I notice that I don't feel open and light, but I feel heavy and contracted and my stomach hurts, or I was even getting little pain in my chest, little zaps of pain in my chest. I realized that those were reactions from my brain because my brain was in a fear-based loop. So once you acknowledge that body symptom, you can be like, okay, what was I thinking about? And maybe if you weren't even thinking about something, what were you doing? Where were you? What kind of state were you in? So for example, when I was really scared about the pandemic, I would sometimes get these sharp pains in my chest when I was on public transit because, there's people around you and, not everyone's wearing masks and you're scared that people are going to give you COVID and blah, 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 blah. I would just get curious about those pains. And once I put my attention on them and just let them be there and not hyper-focus, don't hyper-focus. See, I was hyper-focusing on them for a long time. Just letting them be there, getting curious about, oh, why is this happening? Not judging yourself, just being like, interesting. What am I doing right now? Oh, I'm on transit. Oh, there's lots of people around me. It's rush hour. Oh, I'm scared of getting sick. Oh, this is creating a negative emotion in my body. And I do this on a regular basis. Whenever I feel some sort of uncomfortable body sensation. There's this really great quote that I heard from my mentor, Wendy Braun, and I don't know if she got it from someone else, but she says, if it feels good, it's true. And if it feels bad, it's a lie. And this has gotten me through so much shit because she's so right. When something feels bad in your body, it's an ego-based thought. It's a fear-based thought. It's fear. Fear is an illusion. It's something that your brain is creating. But if you sit in the present moment, in the now, and you let yourself just be, not do, not think, just be, you realize that you can find peace within that chaotic mindset. You can be still. You can be calm. There's inner peace available to you at any moment. And when something feels good, like it's lighting you up, it's passionate. When I got the idea for this podcast, I felt amazing in my body. Yoga has helped a lot with embodiment too. When something is aligned, when something is from your source, your higher power, it feels good in your body. And even if it's, a message that your intuition is telling you that you need to, for example, like maybe you're on the wrong path, it still feels good because you know that it's true deep down. But when you get anxiety, when you get fear, it feels tight. You're contracting. Your everything is tight and you feel scared and you feel horrible. And that's an indication that your body is responding negatively to something that is going on in your mind. You have power to change your life in any way that you want. You have so much more power than you think you do. And if you really, really set your mind to healing, which I did, it will open the doors of healing in ways that you couldn't have even imagined. My point to all this is you have the capacity to heal yourself. You have the capacity to have a fulfilling and beautiful and joyful and peaceful life. You do not need to stay in this feeling place of fear. Once you realize that it's not actually benefiting you, you can let it go. And once you realize that this fear, maybe it was beneficial to you at one point in your childhood, maybe you developed this fear habit loop in your childhood to keep you safe as a kid because you didn't know any better and you didn't have any emotional regulation. And that was the only way your brain knew how to deal with distressful situations and scary situations, is your brain taking over. But now that your brain has developed fully, if you're an adult, you have the capacity to change those thoughts and rewire your brain so that your brain does not have to automatically go back to living like you're a child again and operating as if you're a child again. You're not, you're an adult. You can live in the now. You can free yourself from your past. You can. I'm going to talk a lot about this on this podcast and how I've been able to help myself and my mental health and free my mind of all this bondage. That bondage in a bad way, if you know what I mean. So I touched on how to notice when your ego, when your fear is trying to creep in. And as soon as you acknowledge it with a loving awareness, and not let yourself get lost in it, if you just acknowledge it, let it be there, but not give into it, not give your energy into it. And once your ego doesn't get any energy from you, it goes away. It's like, okay, I can't survive here. I'm going to see you later. I'm going to go and rest. I'm going to go hibernate until the next time you're triggered, and then I'm going to pop up again. That's kind of how it works. But if you just kind of acknowledge it, be like, okay, I know what this is. Thank you, ego, for keeping me safe in my childhood all these years, but I no longer need you. You no longer serve me. You do not serve me right now in this moment. And if you say that to yourself, you'll see that it goes away. One way that I've allowed my intuition to come in is paying attention to the feelings and the thoughts that actually feel good to me. When I got the idea to have a podcast, and when I got the feeling that I could do it on my own, it was a beautiful feeling of, passion and excitement and joy and fulfillment. And those are, the things that I've been leading my life with is, I find that every time I listen to this guidance, it leads me to amazing success and joy and fulfillment, etc. It leads my life in a really, really good direction. One way that I've been able to channel this guidance sometimes is getting quiet. Stillness. Yoga has been really good. So you need to quiet down the mind in order for you to receive this guidance. You can't receive the guidance if you're constantly listening to your mind and your ego and thinking, period. You have to stop thinking. in order to receive this guidance. And that is, that is a difficult thing to do. Trust me, I've not mastered this at all. But I just know that the few times when I have quieted my mind, whether that's through meditation, yoga, sound healing, maybe even going for a walk in nature and just observing the nature, sitting by the water, just sitting in stillness, being in stillness. Even in the shower, actually, I've gotten a lot of inspiration when I've stopped thinking. Stillness is where guidance comes from. And that guidance is the most beneficial information. Fear is never going to lead to success. I'm sorry. And fulfillment. It's just not. Listening to your anxiety and letting anxiety lead your life and the decisions you make, you're not going to receive true, deep senses of fulfillment, joy, passion, wholeness. It's not going to lead you there. But listening to that inner guidance, that calm voice, the voice that doesn't make you feel nervous or scared when you hear it, that's the voice that truly transforms your life into a life of fucking the life that you've always dreamed of. You'd be so surprised at the miracles that can come out of listening to that inner guidance and not listening to your fear-based thoughts. I'm just planting a seed in your head right now. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for hearing me out. Take this or leave this, but if it speaks to you, if it calls to you, that means something. If you listen to this and you have a deep knowing that this is true, take that as your sign to continue on this path and to keep being curious. I am going to be talking a lot about healing, spiritual growth, mental health, growth in every aspect. I am evolving so much as a human being right now. And if you are also a human being that is evolving, then this is the podcast for you. The more I learn, the more I'm going to share with you guys. Every episode is going to be a new thing that I've learned in my life, a new thing that I've learned that's really helped me live a better life, period. This is the safe space that I've created for myself in my head. And I'm opening up this safe space to you guys as well. And I hope that you're able to extend this safe space into your own mind as well. Just being gentle with yourself, just having a little bit more compassion for yourself, understanding, empathy. I am unlocking layers of empathy for myself I didn't even know existed. And that has grown to having more empathy for my loved ones, the planet, my romantic relationship, animals, plants. Doing this inner work has opened up a deeper sense of love in my life in all areas. I really hope you enjoyed this first episode on distinguishing fear and intuition and how to lead your life more with intuition and kick fear to the curb because it's really not benefiting you. It's really not. Even when you think that it is, it's not. Trust me. If you liked this, please give me a thumbs up on all the platforms, whichever platform you're listening on, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Please give me a good review. And I really hope to see you again next week. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for trusting me. This is such an exciting journey and I'm stoked to be on it with you guys. I love you. Bye. Mwah.